All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to ATD Greater Atlanta's web series, Building Our Vision. 2020 has changed everything that we do from how we work to how we live. So we've tapped some experts in our community to help us build our vision of the future in these uncertain times. So today our guest is Zack Hudson. He's the head of talent management and leadership development at Kindred at Home. And he's also the founder and the host of the podcast, Passing the Baton. So thank you so much for joining us, Zack.
Yeah, honored to be here with you and excited to talk through some stuff today. You're right. It's to say, we talk on some of our podcasts about just how crazy times it is. And we've gotten tired of saying that because it's kind of like a COVID fatigue, right? So
Totally. I'm tired.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm tired of it. When can we move on from this?
That's right. That's right.
Unfortunately, we cannot. So here we are. So before we kind of, get into it, I want to know a little bit about your background.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit like, where did you start? Did you always know you were going to be in talent development?
No, absolutely. Absolutely not. So I spent a number of years, probably a little over 15 years, I think, from beginning to end at a company called Lifeway Christian Resources. And I started out there as a college kid working in college and just stayed and worked in operations. So I didn't have a traditional HR background by any means. My degree is in public relations, which has ended up paying off in the long run. But grew up in operations, so I was an operations leader and ended up leading about 500 employees across the Southeast, about 7 different states. So kind of that regional kind of VP or area director, depending on what your organization is. And it was through that time of seeing the people as I was trying to replicate my success, because that was really kind of my goal, was to fix it and make things better and move on to somewhere else and kind of do it over and over again. But I really found the power was in the people and not trying to do everything myself. And so I found so much more success by replicating and taking the approach to building strong teams. And as I was coaching other kind of locations across the country and doing special projects, that was always my secret sauce, and that's what I became known for, was kind of the talent guy at that point. And we didn't have that function at our organization, so they created it like this dual function where I was dual operations and really kind of leading this talent piece for us in the direction we were going. And that's really where it all came about. And so through that process, found my love and passion for that, and did a pivot in my career and got my certification through ATD, so Certified Professional in Talent Development. There's a little over 2,000 of us in the world, and just keep growing and going from there. So yeah, and then started podcasts, and then that led to another podcast, and now there's all sorts of things, and I'm so honored to be at Kindred at Home helping lead their talent function.
Yeah. So how has Kindred at Home changed in 2020?
Yeah, so Kindred at Home has a crazy story. It's very interesting because we are a very large organization. We're about 45,000 strong associates across the U.S., about 30 states, and so it's fascinating because I really call it, and our group kind of calls it, like a 45,000 person startup, because it has this history of being in Kindred Healthcare proper, which is like hospitals and things, but we really focus on hospice and in-home healthcare and community care as well. And so we broke off from them, and then over the years we've acquired smaller organizations too. So it's this interesting mix of dual legacies and histories and all that. And so we're building up to that, and it's just it's really all new things. So you wouldn't think an organization has been around a while that's that large. They're pretty set in stone, but the spot that I was in today was newly created, so they didn't have anybody here either at Kindred at Home who does this. So it's a lot of creating, a lot of fun, a lot of helping people see that there's a better way to do things, and the grass is greener, and it's right here in front of us, and so helping them see that and equipping them to be wildly successful where they are.
So, okay, so you've mentioned twice now that at your earlier organization and at Kindred at Home, you just kind of created your job, right? So
Yeah.
how are you convincing these people that these things are gonna help their organization? Like, what do you say to them?
Yeah, so that's where the operation piece definitely suits me, because I think a lot of HR people and talent development people come up in a traditional HR background, and so they know the right things, right? They know the theory and the application, but they haven't lived it on the other side. And so my history says, okay, I know what's important, and so I tie a lot of things to what makes it easier and more efficient for you as an operational leader, because that's what I would have wanted as an operational leader. Or show me the money, right, of how this impacts me and lowers my retention, or increases my yearly retention of the first year for my leader, or lowers my hiring costs. I mean, that was definitely the way that we sold programs in my past. Of, hey, here, from this point to this point, we made $20 million because of what we did right here. Or, hey, I raised our women in leadership by 40%, raised our minority percentage by 30%. And you start throwing out some crazy numbers like that, and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm so, again, honored at Kindred at Home, because they really do trust me and the team that I work with to do some of these things. So they're super easy and very supportive of just creating a new day here at Kindred at Home.
That's awesome. So have you guys transitioned to virtual now? Is everybody virtual at Kindred at Home?
Yeah, well, healthcare and COVID.
Right.
Quite the challenge. So yeah, we have transitioned quite a bit. So we have one of our headquarters here in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's weird, right? You got to call it what it is. It's weird because it's, you're used to being on there in a floor with a couple hundred people, and now I can count on one hand how many people I see on a regular basis. So
right.
It's odd, but we're adapting to it just like everybody else, and in the field as well, of how do we balance. I was talking to some leaders yesterday about this. How do we balance and honor our CDC guidelines but also honoring our people in the process? And sometimes we get kind of confused, or we get so much just sticking to the rules and regulations that we forget the people in the process. And I think there's a way to balance both of those when we're intentional about it.
Okay, so speaking of balance, so not only are you the Kindred at Home guy, you're also running, what is it now? It's 4 podcasts.
Yeah.
So, okay, so how do you juggle all of that?
Yeah.
It's like I'm barely doing half of my job right now. Like, how are you doing, 5 jobs? Like,
so it's fun. It's definitely a challenge. I learned during operations to be really solid in the value of time management. And so I teach a class on that a couple of times a year. And so I really live it out myself. And so I've got different systems where calendars in place here in front of me, my whiteboard and all this other stuff I keep track of as well. But it really helps me stay on task. So I've been with Kindred, it'll be a year in February, so getting closer and closer to a year. And when I took the job there, I had all the written content for Passing the Baton. It was already done till February 2021. So I was a year ahead on that piece. So just being intentional about, okay, every day setting aside time just to write or create, because sometimes, right, if you're creative, you can bang out a bunch of stuff really quick. And then sometimes it's like 4 hours to get one page done.
Oh,
yeah, you just don't know, right? So focusing on that.
When's your class? Like,
yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So I try to do things when I know my kind of creative sweet spots during my day. So I like to do things a lot early in the morning, and then later in the evening, oddly enough, are my zones. So I do a lot of creating there. So yeah, I got way ahead there, and then staying ahead. So so Passing the Baton, we just celebrated our 5th year anniversary last week. So very excited there to be a kind of a longevity podcast, because there's just not a whole bunch of us that make it that far. So that one, and then Leaders of Atlanta is more of it's a serial kind of thing. So it's got seasons. So we completed season 1 in 2020, and we'll go back for season 2 in 21. And then their corporate podcast, Kindred at Home's Lead the Way, which is more of a practical how to tell me really tangibly how to do leadership in a healthcare environment. And then our other show is Kindred at Home's At the Table. And the idea is kind of like here today, right? It's me and then a different leader sitting at the proverbial table. And the idea is it's the two of us plus the listener that's hanging out with us. So it gives you a very intimate and kind of behind the curtains view with our leaders for their own career journeys and insights and inspirations and how you can go from point A to point B in your career. So it's about scheduling and getting ahead. So so Passing the Baton, we're written through February. We've recorded through the end of October now. So about 6 weeks out ahead of there. Lead the Way, we're probably 4 or 5 weeks ahead there.
Jealous.
So yeah. So then, right, because the stress, right, it's a wave. So when you're riding a wave, anything, right, take podcasts out of the equation. When you're riding anything and that pressure and deadlines are right on top of you, man, I mean, I get an eye twitch when I get super stressed, and my eye would be twitching all the time. But to build that space in so that you can live and breathe and create and do good and not be stressed out by the environment. We got enough stress that's going on already.
Right.
It helps a lot for sure. Yeah. So stay ahead of people.
It's going to be the title of this episode. Stay ahead with Zack Hudson.
That's right.
Why podcasts? Like what makes a podcast such a great medium?
Yeah. So 5 years ago, I started writing a piece, and it was I've only told this story a couple of times, but Passing the Baton started out as a newsletter to my operational leaders. At the time, the company didn't see the value in it, so I was like, I'm just going to do my own thing then. And so that's what it was. It was lamely titled Leadership Insights, the most generic, stupidest title you could come up, non-inspired for sure.
Practical.
Yes, that's right. So
to the point.
Yeah, that's right. So the first quarter, it was called that, and then once we turned from January of that next year, we named it Passing the Baton, started branding it that way. And then I had a friend, Lou Mongello. He actually makes a living podcasting down in Florida, doing the WDW radio show. And he said, you should do a podcast. And then another guy said, hey, you should do a podcast. And I'm like, I don't know anything about this. I listen to Lou's show, and I don't think I can do it. But we did it. We sat down, and at the time, my co-host was John Long. We sat down at a table and had the Blue Yeti mic that you have there, and held around it. It took us 4 hours to crank out the first 13-minute episode.
Oh my God!
But we did it, and we were so excited. So it was really about being an operational person and having all these people spread out across the country. I couldn't see them all the time, and so I had a heart to connect them to. Again, resources to help them be better. And so the podcast was that vehicle to go, okay, I can't be with you all the time, but listen to this, and it'll be as close as we can be to sitting down and helping you improve in whatever topic we were talking about. So it was really meant for my internal people, but we released it publicly, and then it just kind of blew up from there. And so, yeah, it's crazy. Today I checked our Google stuff yesterday. I think we crossed 200 countries this last month. So
200 countries?
Yeah, I know.
That's
insane.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny how things start out small and you have best intentions, and they can grow and as they connect to an audience.
Definitely. Yeah, I've felt that podcasting, even doing these kinds of interviews, have helped me really just sit down, reflect.
Oh, sure.
Like that. That's really helpful. It's nice to kind of take a breath and just think about what's going on and what do you want to ask people, and it's really great.
That's exactly right. And at Kindred at Home, right? So in home health, I have a lot of nurses and physical therapists that go and work in home. So it's really about leveraging, there's all this windshield time between visits. And what do we do with that? They're listening to the radio, awesome. Listen to podcasts, awesome. Wait a minute, they're listening to podcasts. Well, let's throw some of this stuff in here. And do it in a format that goes, okay, I can get you a whole leadership or career topics from the time you hit your door to the time you hit the next door. And that's what it is. That's the format. And that's really the format for two of the shows. The other two are a little bit longer. But yeah, that commuter style format is what I call and coach people on is the sweet spot of times on podcasts. That's 17 minutes.
17 minutes?
Yeah, that's money right there.
in Atlanta, you can get 2 podcasts, like 2 episodes.
That's right. Well, that's right. Yeah, that's right. For sure. For sure. Yeah, you can get 2 in there. And that's great. You know, as long as it's small, bite-sized, tangible, you know, right, in the training community, right, we call that micro-learning a little bit. Right. But just give it to me in bite-sized chunks. So, yeah.
Right. So, okay, so we're all virtual now, right? What would you, and a lot of people want to start podcasts, you know, podcasts are really, they're hot right now. So what would you say to somebody who's trying to start a podcast right now?
Yeah. So a few things. Number one, just do it. Just start. There's so much you get into, right? You can jump on an IGN and they're like, hey, here's a whole list of these microphones and here's a whole list of these systems and a whole list of these headphones. And yada, yada, yada. We started out with a MacBook, an old dinky MacBook Air. I mean, like, do CPR on it to get started. And the Yeti, which is a great microphone, super cheap though, right? Like $100 if you can find it on sale thereabouts. Yep. So not a lot of investment there. And so it's really inexpensive to get in. You just got to do it. So I would just encourage you just to do it. It's going to be nervous doing your first couple of shows, but just have fun with it there. And then there's 2 other pieces that people get hung up on and they don't get successful in podcasts. Number one is they look too much at numbers. So I don't look at our listener numbers really at all. I can't tell you, X 10,000, whatever. Right? I can't tell you the actual count. I keep the country count every now and then just because it's fun to kind of see it geographically.
That's cool.
But
yeah.
So don't look at your count because it can be discouraging, right? So if you, like us, we 3 hours to do that first show and 10 people listen, well, that's discouraging.
Yeah.
So don't look at that because you haven't built
your mom.
Yes, exactly. That's me re-downloading, looking, listening. That's right. So don't get discouraged there. The average podcast only lasts 7 episodes because people put in all the work. They realize, oh my gosh, it's more work than I thought. And I got to keep cranking these things and nobody's listening. So they drop out. So hang in there, get you a good plan, what you want to stand for, what your audience is, your message is, your kind of little corner of the podcast universe, and just go with that. It's just crazy to me how much the podcast has served my own career in ways I never would have imagined, and it had nothing to do with the size of the audience. It really had to do with me growing as a person and continue to push myself and grow my own expertise. And it didn't, as Lou grew his audience to have a occupation from podcasting, my journey was the total opposite, yet they're shared in that podcasting got us where we are today. So
yeah. So how did you develop your podcast voice? You know, I mean, not just your radio voice,
podcast voice.
Right. Hello. So welcome.
That's right.
So,
welcome.
yeah. But how did you kind of figure out what your niche is in the podcast world or, things like that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, and this is really a good separator in talent development world because we have a tendency to do this a little bit, and we just say a lot of generalities of just, hey, just develop somebody, and then you come back and you're like, now, why didn't you develop them? I told you to develop them, and you're like, all right, what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
I did my best.
Yeah, exactly. And you're frustrated because I didn't give you good direction. I'm frustrated because the person isn't turned around. And so that we do a lot of, we think that we're super intentional and very detail oriented in our training. And a lot of times our training comes across like that. It's very kind of benign and just overly general. And so with the podcast, that's where we found our success was. It really is. Here's point 1, 2, 3, and 4, and here's exactly what to do. And again, it was kind of that we're going to stand on this. No matter if you're in college or you're in the boardroom, get in the car, listen to it, get 1, 2, 3, and 4, be able to know exactly what to do. Get out of your car and you're done. That was our show, and so that's what we figured out with Leaders of Atlanta. It was really I wanted to build a show that showcased some leaders in our city that I think very highly of, that the other people in the city might not realize or might not know about. And so Johnny Zell and the Bias Corporation, the guy is freaking phenomenal. He's a wonderful, wonderful CEO, heart for health and wellness and the environment, and I mean, just a stand-up, very cool guy. And so people like that I want to introduce the city more to. And that was the show. It was that, and then also about their journey as well. So it's finding a unique kind of perspective and story and a way to connect as well. Yeah. So even like that show, Leaders of Atlanta, it's about 50-50 split of audience here in Atlanta and then audience all over the country. So again, people connect with it and they'll come.
Yeah. Well, they connect with you too. Like, how much of your personal story do you put into these podcasts?
Yeah. So, Passing the Baton for sure, is a lot of that. I think I'm a pretty decent storyteller, so I think that helps too, as well. But yeah, there's some very personal things in there. I've talked about, one of the biggest struggles I had as a leader was I had an employee that passed away. I saw him. I was the last person to see him alive. I took a straight at the red light. He took a left, and got in a car accident, after we were done. So that was the hardest thing. And so that has to be very transparent and authentic, right, with your audience. And instead of being like, I'm the host, and so I'm the cool guy or whatever else. But I think people, and just in leadership, they appreciate that vulnerability and stuff. So yeah, we talk about, Mike Floyd throws me under the bus all the time of ways I can be better, and then I share stuff like that too. Everybody goes through stuff. Nobody's perfect. So yeah, definitely share a lot of personal stories as well.
Wow, yeah, I mean, we don't have to get into it, but that's a story. Yeah,
it is.
Okay, so let's talk about 2020 a little bit,
Yeah.
Building our vision kind of things. Like, I think the hardest thing about this year has just been trying to figure out what exactly happened, right? And then what has changed, because it was like in March, we were like, okay, go home, and then once we got home, everything changed. We have to figure. So what exactly do you think has been the hardest part of 2020? What's been your biggest challenge? And then what's maybe the biggest challenge for leaders and worker, like team members?
Yeah, for us at Kindred at home, it was definitely for everybody, right? It was a surprise. It's not something you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a pandemic and let's do this thing, right? It was like, oh, we see it, it's coming, I'm feeling it, I have a bad feeling about this. Oh my gosh, it's here, right? It's kind of like the wave again, right? It's here, it's overtaking us. Now it's on top of us. We're underwater. How do I get back so I can breathe? Right. And start swimming so I can get back to shore. And that's really, I think, how everybody had to react is, oh my gosh, I got to get above water. I got to get to the land, right? And so that was the reaction that we saw a lot of people of, okay, let's quickly put in some things in place. Let's send people home. Let's cut the kids out from school. Let's do that sort of stuff. And so we... being in that healthcare environment, it was a perfect storm for us because you have all this happening. Your offices are drastically changing on how we're doing, but our patients still need us, right? So it doesn't matter to them that there's a pandemic. They still need our help and our care and our support. And so we're having to bring in all these other supplies. Well, guess what? Everybody's making a run on everything, right? Grocery stores are emptying out. Everybody's buying the PPE. Civilians are buying the stuff that don't normally buy it and are hoarding it like crazy. You see stories of people like lifting up U-Hauls full of masks and scrubs and everything, all kind of stuff, right?
Water bottles.
Yes,
like it's not a hurricane.
Yes, exactly. So we're combating that, and then we've got to take care of our people. So now we're doing that. The government is seizing shipments to replenish their own stuff. It's just a lot of crazy stuff that was happening right there at the beginning. A lot of fear and unknown, right? So we were battling that. David Cosby's our CEO. You want to talk about a great storyteller. That guy's a great storyteller, and he tells a lot of stories of just really connecting to the heart of the people, and he gets out in front of our organization and tells the story of Kindred and how we're going to be there and how he's an authentic and transparent leader and how things are tough, and here's what we're doing in that tangible A, B, C, and D. And so it helped people realize a little bit, okay, we do have a plan. We are getting back to shore, and this is how we're going to do it. And so since then, it's been just adapting to that. And it's been interesting as we've gone into the fall that, this kind of COVID fatigue has set in. And so that's what we're really dealing with a lot these days, and spending a lot of time with leaders right now of how do I lead in a virtual environment, and for our associates of how do I work in a virtual environment. I'm tired, I'm worn out, I'm stressed out. I've had to deal with serving COVID positive patients, and that takes a lot of mental fortitude and strength and resilience. And now, CDC guidelines are in my location. I can't go in there as much anymore like I wanted to. So what do I do? And start to feel isolated, just as everybody else has at this point, right? I haven't seen the person that was across from me in the cube since March.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the big thing is helping our people with isolationism, and then helping our leaders figure out. I was teaching a course on remote leadership, and now that's really gone to everybody. At this point, it really was for that kind of, I call them a multi-unit leaders that kind of lead at a larger level, but really it's for everybody these days, because everybody is remote leading or working in some form or capacity, more than likely. So,
yeah. So speaking more about isolationism, and kind of, we're all dealing with, feeling really separated from our work environment and from our coworkers and things like that. Like, do you have any kind of tips or suggestions for people to bridge that gap?
So we're gonna get into the tangible. Give me the practical pieces. I like it.
Yeah,
all right, I like it. Yeah, sure. I got some. I'll do some for leaders and some for workers. How about that?
Okay.
I'll go through. We'll go through these pretty quick. So, for leaders, and this is really going through talking to leaders, a little bit of my personal history, Kindred's history as well, and so this is really kind of what we're leaning into these days, and that's with our leaders of setting clear expectations and communicating up front what's expected. It's easy as we get separated out into a remote environment to assume and guess that the other person knows. But we've got to be very intentional about filling that person in so they don't feel isolated. Because when you don't have the information of what the company's doing or what your expectation is or how you're doing, you do feel that isolation, right? Of I don't know. And then we as humans have a tendency to fill in those blanks with our own narrative. And sometimes that's right, and sometimes it's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
an email is very, it doesn't communicate that
That's
much.
right. Yeah. So you send an email and you think I've done it, it's done, and it's not. So you've got to layer it in for sure. I think the next one would be to trust and monitor progress to ensure that you have alignment. So people think that trust and verify from my military days, those don't have to go contradictory to each other. So we think that trust and verify is not really trusting. So I'm saying trust, but also make sure that they're doing what they need to do and step in and coach when you need to as well. It's not about, micromanaging, because nobody has time for that. It's a waste of your time, and you're only going to frustrate your people more. So it's really about empowering your team to do what they do best, and that's hopefully what you've equipped them to be. So that would be one as well. Another one that I would give you would be to ask people for their feedback. So how's it going? What do you need? How can I help? And so, right now, so when we get together, especially people in the U.S., they'll check the show out. We say, hey, how's it going when we meet each other? And we really don't expect anything, especially a negative response. So if we were like, hey, how's it going? And you're like, oh, man, it's going awful. It's going really, really bad. That just totally turns the conversation like, no, I didn't.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
I was not prepared for this.
Exactly. Please, no, please. Right? So we don't really expect an answer. What we use the phrase for is a conversation starter to get what we really want to talk about. So really take that time to ask those, how's it going? Those open-ended questions. What do you need? How can I help? But then slow down and actively listen to hear what the person's saying. So when they're being vulnerable or transparent, or they're sharing a struggle or maybe even a success, hopefully, as well, that you're actually listening to them and not preparing to move on in the conversation yet. But just listen, just simply for listening, goes a long way in helping people out. So there's 3 for leaders. You want to do some for workers?
Yeah, please, for me.
All right. Yeah, so here's one. So for our workers that are listening today or watching us today, Number one, I would say stay focused on your assigned task by avoiding distractions in the home, right? Because this one can be super challenging. I've got a great setup here. I have a studio here in my home in Kennesaw. I've got a studio down in Atlanta at our office, corporate office there. But a lot of people that we work with and coach, like they have a laptop and it's on the kitchen table. Mm-hmm. And they've got a kiddo at home, right? Doing school from home, virtual learning. They've got 2 cats and a dog, and they've got a little one that they're streaming cartoons in the background.
Mm-hmm. And a spouse.
That's right. And a spouse is working from home too. That's real.
Right.
That is real. So doing what you can to eliminate distractions. So whether that is dropping in some headphones, working around schedule a little bit, doing something creative to set up a workspace. So in our house, for example, we have a little bit of an older house. So we have that, back in the day, they had like these very formal dining room areas, right? So what we did, I have a first grader and a 10th grader. And what we did, we turned that into a classroom. And so we got 2 desks, put them catty-cornered in the desks so they're not seeing each other's screens and stuff, and got them set up that way so they can do stuff. It's worked out great for us. Again, being a little bit creative. We talked about it at the beginning, and my wife was like, I don't know if that's going to work. And I wasn't sure either, but it did. And it's been fine for us. So just
creating a space has been really helpful.
Yes.
And establishing like, hey, from 9 to 6, this is the office.
That's
and
right.
Then as soon, and then you got to get out.
That's exactly right. Yep. And that goes to my next step: establish good work routines and boundaries. So it's easy to chase rabbit trails of work into 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night as well. But if you've got set work schedules, stick to those schedules and don't let those bleed into each other. Because I'm a very big work-life balance. Some people call it work-life rhythm kind of person. And that's how I can do so. Another way I can do so much of the stuff that I do is I compartmentalize those things. So once your day's done, let your day be done and do that. And then kind of go between these 2 tips here is to really schedule your out-of-work things into your work calendar and to be intentional about that. So if I need to run errands, like every Tuesday we go and get our groceries. Do I need to go do A, B, C, D? Put that on your calendar so that it can be done outside your regular work routine, so that when you're in your work routine and you're at your table and you've got all that business going on behind you, you don't also have, I've got to mow, I've got to go do laundry, I've got to go get my groceries. All that's done, right? Because it's either on your calendar to do or you have done it because you're sticking to your time management stuff. So that one there. And then a couple others here, super quick. Number 3 here is to turn your camera on during video stuff. So we're doing video today. That's great. Some cultures and organizations are super great about video, and some are not at all. It's a newer piece of them. So having that visual connection to somebody, even if it's virtually, makes a lot of difference in building rapport, connection, a sense of a teamwork and being together. And so don't discount that as well. And
you know what my most difficult part of keeping my video on is like not looking at myself, but looking at the other person.
Yes.
That's hard for me personally.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I've upgraded my studio during the pandemic. And so now I've got these 3 giant screens here. It's really quite ridiculous. And so, so I've got stuff like over here. And so for me, that's a great point now of being cognizant of how you're looking, because I can read my notes over here, but right here you're looking at me and I'm not engaged with you at all. So I try to pull in what's really important. Like right now I've got my recording stuff over here to the right because I need to see it, but it's not that important for what we're doing. So so I keep everything like right now. It's like my camera, you're right below it, and I've got a couple of things right below that to keep everything streamlined as much as possible. Great point there. My last one here for our workers, and this is a good one here, is let your leader know about your virtual work experience and connect with them on ways that they can help you. So let them know, okay, here's what I'm struggling with. Man, I've got these kids. The kids, right? So maybe you need help with a little bit of flexibility in your schedule. Maybe it's you're struggling because you don't have enough resources. Maybe you need you don't have the right personal connections or the work connections, or maybe there's a technical issue that you need help with. to make your life easier, you've got to speak up, right? Because your leader can't help you if they don't know. So if I don't know you have any of those issues and we connect on Zoom and you're like, thumbs up, Zach. And I'm like, all right, thumbs up, you go. And you get off the call and you're struggling that afternoon. I'm not doing my job as a leader, but I'm not doing my job because I haven't been communicated with to do my job. And maybe I can help lighten that load for you. So make sure you're communicating with them so they can give you the support that you need.
Yeah. Well, those are some great tips. Thank you so much. Super practical.
Yeah.
And I feel like we covered a lot of different topics
We did.
from your experience as a talent development leader and as a podcaster and just as a person existing in 2020 right now.
Yeah.
So we appreciate so much your advice and your mentorship. If anybody watching this wants any further information or just wants to connect with Zach, you can check him out on LinkedIn, or you can email him directly at zach@zackhudson.com. Or you can check him out at the Passing the Baton website.
Yeah, that's right.
What's your website?
Yeah, passingthebatonpodcast.com.
Perfect. Yep. Okay. So yeah, check out his podcast. It's awesome. Bite-sized pieces.
That's right.
Just, not that anybody's in the car anymore, but, check it out during your lunch hour
That's
or whatever.
Right.
So, yep. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
and stay
you.
tuned. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to end it here.
All right.
I need to work on my sign off.